Issue 67 takes an interesting turn. We cut to the far-off future of 2009, and America has been devastated. Man, the old Brawl video took a dark turn in this timeline. On that note, this is indeed an alternate future that more matches the cartoon's timeline. But not entirely. In this case, Cybertron was lost to Unicron. He still created Galvatron, Rodimus Prime and all that happened, though Rodimus is now dead in this timeline, and Galvatron destroyed most of North and South America. Unicron's servants from the normal Marvel timeline find Galvatron and take him back to their version of events, allowing the remaining humans and Autobot forces some hope in their alternate future. Definitely a good done-in-one that will contribute to things. Not sure why this was done, I admit. It's possible they wanted some focus on Galvatron for the toys, but this was 1990. Aside from some odd decisions for reruns like quote-unquote Season 5 or Generation 2, the show had been off the air for a few years, and the Galvatron toy was a few years old now. Why bring him in at this point? And why in this particular method instead of just reformatting Megatron into Galvatron like it happened in the movie? In the meantime, issue 68 catches us up on several things we haven't seen in a while, like BlackRock, Circuit Breaker, and just humanity in general. Rat has disbanded now that the United Nations Security Council has acknowledged the two different sides in the war. BlackRock, as such, is assembling a team of superpowered humans to combat the Decepticons. Because if we can't protect the Earth, you can be damn well sure we'll transform it. The Earth is a transformer? No, that ever happened before in this franchise? The issue is about recruiting a guy who can summon volcanoes from nowhere and everyone wants him. BlackRock, obviously, for his team, later referred to as the Neo Knights. Circuit Breaker wants some help destroying all robots. And actually, Starscream of all wants help in taking out Scorponok, becoming a power master with this guy as the battery. BlackRock eventually convinces him and Circuit Breaker to join up, pointing out that she's burning herself out on her crusade and becoming less and less human than even the robots she wants to destroy. Starscream, on the other hand, gets an offer from Shockwave to join him instead. Furman had hoped to spin the Neo Knights off into their own series in the Marvel Universe, with the Transformers stuff being explained away as a training program for them to prepare them to fight stuff like Ultron or Sentinels. The pitch even included new, more 90s costumes for them. I'd say there's probably something there for this sort of team, especially with the increased cyberpunk aesthetic of 90s stuff, but let's face it, it'd probably be pretty generic and lame. It's not helped that Circuit Breaker is the only team member who actually had an interesting look to her, though the pitch artwork also indicates that she finally got some clothes and shoulder pads. Anyway, over to issue 69. The Autobots learned that there's a chance that Ratchet was inside of the travel portal when the explosives went off, so they begin seeking out Ratchet in the dimensional space between a portal's entry and exit. In the meantime, the time-displaced Galvatron is brought to Unicron.
Galvatron, speak with your mind.
Of all the times, of all the scientific principles this series has been violating, this is when they suddenly decided, oh yeah, there's no air in space. They're gonna have to speak telepathically. Since it's still going to take a few more issues for Unicron to reach Cybertron, he wants Galvatron to go ahead of him and make sure that any efforts to combat him are destroyed. If he agrees, he'll send him back to his own timeline when this is all over. Prime, in the meantime, has a gambit that he's going to pull. Primus said that the Civil War has stopped their development and thus hampered their efforts to be ready for Unicron. And thus Primus decided that he's going to approach Scorponok and offer unconditional surrender. I'd go for the conditional surrender. You know, say you'll only surrender if he helps defeat Unicron. Otherwise, you run the risk of him saying, I'm a headmaster and my human part ain't from Cybertron. Screw you, thanks for the surrender, idiot. Of course, Prime has some other distractions than the surrender plan. For one, Grimlock steals the bodies of the other Dinobots to try a procedure that could resurrect them or drive them mad. But then the probe looking for Ratchet finally locates him and brings him through the portal. Problem is, well kids, have some good old-fashioned nightmare fuel.
Jesus Christ!
Okay, issue 69? This is not nice. See, this is what happens when you don't do the fusion dance correctly. Do you like our Halloween costume? We're going as John Carpenter's The Thing! How not to make a Megazord? I think Peridot's experiments with gem mutants may have gotten a bit out of hand.
Enterprise. What we got back didn't live long, fortunately.
Hey, check it out. It's the ending to Sadako vs. Kayako. Hey, remember how, like, 14 issues ago this comic was about Autobots doing professional wrestling?
Ratchet and Megatron! Oh, F this, you're on your own!
I'm at the Ratchet, I'm at the Megatron, I'm at the combination Ratchet and Megatron. And for my final joke on this bit, presenting in their one-man show version of Akira, Ratchet and Megatron, everybody! Yeah, not gonna show you the cover to issue 70, which is a close-up of their combined faces because I suspect I'd be demonetized very quickly. Robot or not, this is gruesome. Issue 70 is great as it has parallel stories occurring. The Autobots trying to figure out what to do with, well, we'll call them Ratchatron for now, while Grimlock is confronted with the possible outcome of his attempted resurrection of the Dinobots. That the nucleon that would be used could be a fate worse than death. In the end, Grimlock decides to proceed, just as Optimus chooses to separate the two, though it will mean that Megatron will have to be saved as well. Issue 71 begins with Optimus' surrender. Kup from the movie in Season 3 has been a recurring presence in these last few issues, and has especially taken umbrage with Prime's decision here.
We have no option. No? Well, I remember an Optimus Prime who would have found an option. An Optimus Prime who didn't know the meaning of the word surrender.
Your weapon.
Have it.
On talk, no shock.
The problem is, as I said, despite even Bludgeon and the Mayhem Attack Squad having arrived and confirmed the story to him, Scorponok thinks that Unicron is just a myth. And of course, things aren't really going any better because Shockwave and Starscream have gathered some Decepticons and plan to attack Scorponok and take back control, believing Scorponok to have screwed over their mission of gathering energy. Oh yeah, and Galvatron is now on Cybertron and spreading the good word of Unicron by attacking the Autobot resistance.
All in all, today's been a bit of a bummer, hasn't it, sir?
Optimus, Kup, and Hot Rod escape from custody when Scorponok keeps delaying their talks, taking Zarek prisoner.
Foolish Autobot! I am a master of Metallicato, the forbidden Cybertronian art of combat.
Fortunately, Kup is a master of the forbidden human art of running you over. Eventually, Scorponok sees reason and is ready to unite, but then Shockwave's forces attack, leading us into issue 72. As the Decepticons start their battles with each other, and Scorponok gets a chance to cut loose and show just how powerful he is, we learn that Galvatron actually plans to betray Unicron and destroy him, learning that he could be stopped if all Cybertronians unite. He believes Primus can be the key to that. Meanwhile, the Decepticon Civil War spills over into Manhattan, forcing the president to authorize the Neo-Knights to engage, bringing us to issue 73. Naturally, this whole situation has gone from bad to worse, especially as the Autobots need to actually help the Decepticons against the Neo-Knights. Plus, Circuit Breaker still doesn't care about the distinction. But fortunately, she actually does do them all a favor, since she recognizes Shockwave as the one who originally fried her neural system and takes him down. However, Galvatron succeeds in awakening Primus and explains the situation to it. As such, Primus uses its power to teleport all the Transformers, plus the Neo-Knights for some reason, to Cybertron. And sadly, the issue ends with the reveal that the Matrix, thought destroyed, is still alive, and now wants revenge. In issue 74, Primus speaks to everyone assembled about Unicron and his history with it.
My power is limited. You are all that stands between Unicron and the Void.
No pressure or anything. The Dinobots were not among those teleported back, and they returned to the Ark. Grimlock had used the nucleon on himself to see if it was safe to use on his compatriots, and while it hasn't driven him mad, he's been having weird pain spasms since then. He also plans to use the nucleon on the other disabled Transformers, not realizing that he's also reactivating Megatron with it. Back with our heroes, Circuit Breaker has gone into a state of shock upon realizing that she's on an entire planet full of robots, her trauma overwhelming her. Primus disappears before they can ask to teleport the humans back to Earth, and we even get some interesting character development for Scorponok, who admits to Prime in private that he's scared to die and is seeing so many forces around them gathering to kill him. Major kudos on this. We've been seeing a slow arc form for Scorponok throughout Furman's run. He's still the bad guy, but we've actually seen some nuance to him that we don't normally get from other leaders among the Decepticons. After a pep talk from Prime, the issue focuses on the new alliance having to fight servants of Unicron, possessed transformers that worship him and want to kill Optimus Prime since he's chosen to lead everyone. After the battle, Optimus doubles over in pain, something that's happened a few times before, but no time to deal with that. Unicron has arrived, leading into the double-sized 75th issue. Unicron just starts ripping out chunks of the planet to eat. Even Optimus Prime has realized that they're dealing with a frickin' planet.
So big! So impossibly big! We can't fight that!
Quick, somebody find a teenage girl named Unicron to blame all this on! Shockwave has his own commentary. Hypothesis. I have no hypothesis. This is beyond analysis. Beyond logic. My vast data grid simply cannot compute.
Sorry, Venkman. I'm terrified beyond the capacity for rational thought.
Let those two lines side by side be a preview of things to come later this year. Galvatron launches an attack on Unicron, which inspires the Autobots and Decepticons to finally counterattack. The Neo-Knights put up a good fight too, but again, they're trying to fight a planet. Only Circuit Breaker stands a chance, and BlackRock decides to break her out of her trauma by slapping her and telling her the robots are laughing at her. Our longest-lasting human hero, everybody! The Ark arrives with the revived Autobots, and of course Grimlock gets to be badass even while Scorponok is killed. The Matrix arrives, still possessing Thunderwing, but even though it's been corrupted, it attacks Unicron as well, wanting to destroy the Transformers itself. However, that same corruption allows Unicron to rip through the Matrix's weird energy form. Optimus reclaims the Matrix's physical form and ejects High Q from himself. Unicron reverts back to his planet form to properly devour Cybertron, only to find himself stopped in his tracks by Circuit Breaker.
If you're gonna do something, Prime, do it now and make it count! All the progress I'd made towards curing Circuit Breaker is gone! I bought you this chance! With her sanity!
Yeah, you were really making progress with her, what with her yelling that she was going to destroy them all and said all robots were alike when she got involved in this battle a few issues ago. GB BlackRock, licensed therapist right here. And as Blaster, no doubt, is blaring The Touch, Optimus flies with the Matrix into Unicron, using the light of life and goodness to utterly destroy it. And thus the Unicron saga ends, but with 5 issues to go for the book. We have yet another slaughter of Autobots and Decepticons with Unicron's attack, though ironically a lot are ones who survived the Underbase saga's slaughter, right when a bunch of Transformers killed from that come back online. In issue 76, it turns out Prime is still alive, just barely, his body even more mangled than ever before. He still dies, but not before trying to tell them to make Grimlock understand something. In the meantime, High Q has finally understood why Optimus was having those pain spasms, that the Power Master process was changing, evolving them into something greater. Meanwhile, apparently they've interpreted Prime's final message, or maybe we just didn't hear it all, but Prowl did, to mean that Prime wanted Grimlock to be the new Autobot leader. Oh, yeah, sure, I mean, it worked out so great last time. Can't wait to see how big his crown is this time. He also said that Prime wanted him to understand that their enemies are living beings and they must only kill as a last option. It's what sets them apart from the Decepticons. It's kind of the main point of the issue, Grimlock needing to accept that idea. He actually gets pretty philosophical about the conflict between the two forces before he changes how he views it all. We also learn that the Nucleons seizing him up was actually the first stage of a change. He's become stronger, but now lacks the ability to transform, promoting a toy line called the Action Masters, where they're just their robot modes. Which, yeah, is kind of an interesting idea, except it kind of defeats the entire point of the franchise. High Q also starts referring to himself as Optimus Prime, but let's table that as we enter issue 77. Bludgeon has become the new leader of the Decepticons. Shockwave and Starscream are trying to repair the Ark and escape, and unfortunately, there's bad news. Cybertron has been experiencing quakes since the end of Unicron, and they have a theory, namely that Primus was the bonding force holding the planet together, and now that he's basically died in the battle with Unicron, the planet is tearing itself apart, and they have to evacuate. The Neo-Knights, along with High Q, are loaded onto a ship, Circuit Breaker pretty much catatonic, while Haikyuu says that they can't leave, that they have to wake the last Autobot, and that they're wrong about what's happening to Cybertron. Meanwhile, the Decepticons blast off in their own ships. I guess it was pretty easy to evacuate the entire planet in a short amount of time, but Bludgeon makes it clear that he has no intention of following through on the Alliance or just settling on a new barren world. They're gonna go out and conquer, start a new empire, and they've sabotaged the Autobots' ships. So they're now stranded on Cybertron. Shockwave and Starscream plan to take the Ark back to Earth to conquer it, but Galvatron stows away so he can do it. Until he's confronted by a resurrected Megatron. Issue 78 begins with Galvatron attacking Megatron, ranting in his own madness about how he'll break the cycle by destroying Megatron before he can become Galvatron.
Wait! Have you ever heard of the Ship of Theseus? It is time to exorcise the past. If you are the disease that plagues me, Megatron, you must be torn out. This is Unicorn. The Ship of Theseus will soon be a part of me.
Megatron's not exactly doing so hot himself. Disoriented, confused, and messed up after being the thing with two heads, so he's actually seeing Galvatron as Ratchet. Back on Cybertron, Grimlock was smart enough to not trust the Decepticons and stole a few of their ships, which are in perfect working order. In the meantime, Galvatron suddenly realizes that trying to kill his past self, even in an alternate timeline, is a really stupid idea, both for potential time travel paradoxes, but also just because, well, he has no actual reason to do it. Ratchet also emerges, revitalized, but he soon realizes that while their bodies have been separated, his mind is still linked to Megatron's. Meanwhile, Haikyuu explains to BlackRock what's up. The Power Master process actually started fully merging Haikyuu with Optimus. He was ejected before the process could be finished, physically becoming him. Their minds are merged though, hence Haikyuu and Optimus are now the same person. Starscream and Shockwave, investigating the disturbance below, find Megatron and Ratchet. Shockwave elects to deal with Megatron, while Ratchet gives Starscream a well-deserved punch for trivializing life so much. Trivializing is one way of describing mass murder. Galvatron saves Megatron, and the two decide to team up to conquer the universe. Ratchet, seeing all this through the link, decides to break the chain, detonating the nucleon and blasting the Ark so that it starts spiraling down to Earth to crash and kill them all. Issue 79 cuts to 6 days later, where Spike Witwicky has arrived at the crashed Ark up in northern Canada. Galvatron survived the crash and now runs rampant, and Spike forgot all about his character development with Fortress Maximus and is now pissy that he has to resume the war and all. And thus he brings Fortress Maximus back online.
Canada calls to ask, what are you guys doing up there?
Meanwhile, the Neo Knights have escaped the shuttle with Haikyuu to find the last Autobot, a being created by Primus as Cybertron's ultimate guardian and who will decide the fate of the planet. Yes, he forgot to set his alarm clock, since for a guardian of Cybertron, he slept through the whole Unicron thing. While Spike and Fort Max resolve their issues, again, and defeat Galvatron, the Decepticons invade the peaceful planet of Klo, easily defeating the populace. However, they soon realize that the Autobots are coming and make plans for their arrival. And issue 79 draws to a close with the humans locating the last Autobot, and bringing us to the final issue of Marvel's Transformers, number 80 in a 4-issue miniseries. The book was canceled due to low sales, and it's understandable. It was 1991, and the franchise was not exactly in the best shape at that point, especially since the comic had started right when the TV show was starting up, and that was long since over with. Although hilariously, low sales in the 90s was 70,000 copies ordered, which nowadays, those numbers would mean that while it's not topping the sales charts, it's still pretty damn successful. The Autobots were immediately ambushed when they arrived on Klo, most of them killed save for Grimlock, Prowl, Blaster, the Dinobots Slag, and Cup. Prowl goes on a rant about Grimlock's crappy leadership, which feels like the gajillionth time he's done so since Grimlock took command, but fortunately the Decepticons arrive and shut him the hell up. Meanwhile, help finally arrives. The Neo Knights, and Action Master Optimus Prime. The group were flown in by the last Autobot, who I just realized his face is the Autobot logo. Nice touch. And he explains how he was awoken by Haikyuu and he used his powers to recreate Optimus's body around him. The last Autobot wants the war to finally frickin' end, but Bludgeon is stubborn, believing that the legends of the last Autobot were actually about a great warrior and ravager of worlds. Still, if he's gonna be a dick, our heroes quickly deal with the Decepticons as the last Autobot resurrects those killed in the ambush. The Decepticons retreat to fight another day, and Prime reveals that Cybertron wasn't destroyed, it was just in the process of recreating itself in the wake of losing Primus. With the help of the last Autobot, it is now stabilized. They'll help the Closians rebuild their world, bring the Neo-Knights back to Earth, and then finally go home in victory. The ending is a bit rushed, of course, but that doesn't make it any less great. Despite some bizarre turns and some poor decisions made by the higher-ups, Marvel's Transformers series is fantastic. Like ROM, it's a wonderful space opera, a great telling of the Generation 1 story that, while not entirely serialized, still feels like a complete story after 80 issues. Highs and lows, great character moments, and some wonderfully silly diversions throughout. It's a great combination of action, superheroics, introspection, horror, western, and the price of war and peace alike. It's certainly not a perfect comic, but damn if it wasn't fun to revisit. An attitude that apparently others agreed with, for we are not done yet with this retrospective. Come back next week for the conclusion as we look at Marvel's attempt to continue the story with Generation 2 and the 2012 return to the story with Regeneration 1.
But today, it's gonna be the trash compactor! Ooh! Ah! Ooh! My mummy fell out. This is kind of a problem. Fix that later.
Hello my friends, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell for notifications on new video releases. If you'd like to support future videos, you can check out my Patreon or purchase a t-shirt via Teespring or Shark Robot. Thanks for watching!